continual discussions about biogas and flatulence, but maybe we'll get to that. There is in your packs, there's a sustainable manufacturing brochure. Perhaps not now, but perhaps later in the evening, perhaps in the bar. You might consider some of the issues in there because it says well more about this than I'm about to. I've only got half an hour. Scottish Leather Group, I think you know who we are, but it is a company to make low carbon leather. I think I'll just move on from that. The company has a vision, and I think one of the key words for me in this vision is the word respected. How do we get there? We get there through being sustainable and by innovating. I think the strapline at the bottom pretty much says where we are and where we're going to. We're good, but I think we're not quite excellent yet. Keeps us driving forwards. What I want to do in this presentation really is to give you a view of where we've been and hopefully where we're going to, or indeed where we're being taken to. Kerry alluded to another thing this morning on the LCA. There's also other issues in terms of ISO 14001, but the standard is changing. Leather manufacturer can't escape that either. There's a sustainable element to the new standard. Not everyone knows that yet, but there is. And it also includes LCA within the standard. So, I'll go back to 2003. Back then, with our then MD, we sat down and said, well, let's conduct an environmental swap. Let's see what's ahead of us for the next 10 or 15, possibly 20 years. Back in 2003, we didn't have multitudes of wind farms. There wasn't a huge renewable industry. But we could see that energy prices were rising. Very obviously, energy prices were rising. Furthermore, the more renewables that were likely to happen, and this is the time of publication of documents, Sven Gill's Biomass Task Force, and indeed some documents in Scotland in particular on the creation of wind farms. It became very obvious that they had to be paid for. So wherever the power was going to come from, it was going to cost considerably more to the consumer. Looming even closer was landfill, or indeed waste disposal within Scotland, in particular in Scotland. Landfill is particularly difficult. Even today, we predicted by 2015 it would be difficult, but there are bans on certain materials that cannot go to landfill. It's not a question of going to a particular landfill, it simply cannot be landfill. We have to sort of segregate, which isn't a bad thing, it's good thing, it encourages recycling, which is great. But ultimately, as we heard earlier this morning, there's still a way that still has to go somewhere. So we had to find a solution for waste. Much of that's legislative driven. Not all of our decisions are legislative driven. Some of it was actually driven by the need to be doing things better. However, you can't escape the fact that having produced 100 tonnes of waste every day and buying the equivalent of 60 tonnes worth of coal every day, putting those two things together to make one solution is pretty obvious. The thermal plant concept was born. 4 or 5 years later, we constructed it and jumped through an awful lot of hoops. I was 6 foot tall before that hair in 2003. Longer. 4 years of planning super PPC regulations. In my case, almost nervous breakdowns trying to get to the position of getting the first licensed plant in the UK. Took its toll. The plant was built, to much acclaim, and it led to the creation of something called low carbon leather, which I don't think at the time was really envisaged. It was a happy consequence. We envisaged PR improvement, we envisaged there being a lack of waste and a reduction in energy consumption. Really, the whole sustainability train began moving. This was widely recognised. Scottish Renewables recognised it. There were local awards, one or two awards are up here now. We've not included all of them by any means. Further, this isn't just about waste and energy, it's also about effluent. Water footprints, and the LCA is a critical component in mitigating our impact. We had to do something to firstly comply, and then secondly reduce our footprint. The ultrafiltration plant was built, improved our compliance in a way. We're currently, for what it's worth, 99.7% compliance towards effluent discharges. But we also recycle all of it. Currently we're recycling something in the order of 50% of our effluent treated back into production. Recognition came as well through corporate footprints, ECO2L was a key one. And by this point, we were reporting CSR, we were reporting greenhouse gas emissions. We took it upon ourselves to report using a standard methodology, even though there isn't one published specifically for other industry. At least we can put out there some numbers, put out a marker as to where we were, and therefore try and justify the low carbon level accreditation. It's not on here, but further to that, in 2011-12, we also got accreditation to ISO 50001. I think we were the first private company to do so. Again, this is adding further and further credibility to the claims we were making. Because there's a big difference about talking about it and actually doing it. So the plant very much exists, as indeed as the ultrafiltration plant. Last year, I was delighted to pick up, at the end of last year, I jumped forward quite a lot here, to the Energy Institute Awards, where we picked up the Environment Award for low carbon leather, strangely enough from our environmental regulator, which was all the more pleasing. A few pictures. Any of you not been to the site or seen the thermal plant or seen the main ship, the mothership of Richard Weir? This is the factories, Baltic Works, NCT, is it 1 and 2, and the thermal plant up here. They are close-knit, it's proximate principle. The idea is that the waste produced in the factory is treated in our effluent plant here, water treated in the UF plant, put back in the water tank, then back into the factories produce the waste is converted into heat, so on this virtuous cycle goes. We're not perfect, it's not 100%, it's far from it, but it works. As mentioned this morning, I think the issue of life cycle assessment and carbon footprint will become even more important. So whether we choose to use corporate footprints or even generate our own methodologies for footprints, or whether we are forced to use some other methodology that is leather industry wide, either way, we still need to know what it is, we need to be able to measure it, and we need to compare ourselves. And that, I think, is helping to drive the innovation and drive the improvement. This is certainly something that our customers are looking for. Also, I mentioned already the ultrafiltration plant. This has been key, firstly, to effluent compliance. It's a key issue, particularly in Scotland, with the Water Framework Directive and the way that our infrastructure in Scotland is funded. We are required to treat our effluent to a point where it is suitable to be recycled. So we do. As I said, it's approximately 50% of the total volume we currently consume. We also take water from our own dam. And this is very different from most places, I would suggest, in that we run a 37,000 cubic metre loch, which provides more than enough water for our production. On a daily basis, the group uses something like 2,000 cubic metres. On average, we use half the European average water use. Waste. The thermal energy plant is a key part of this, but it's not the only part of this. We also sort of segregate, we recycle wherever possible. We try and add value to the waste streams. Part of the zero waste plan is to recognise that the waste that we have, and there's an awful lot of them, and you all know roughly 80% of the highway that comes in becomes waste. Well, 80% of what we receive, therefore, should have some kind of value. It isn't so much just the LCA value of that, is what do you do with it? If you can convert that waste into some kind of useful material, then clearly that's a benefit. And that's the way we changed the way that we were thinking about waste back in 2004. Hopefully this slide hopefully summarises the thinking behind it. I worked my way across this. Because all we're really trying to do here is to show the difference between the linear production model, which is the norm. Raw materials come in on the left, raw materials in here, final product over here, and normally what we see is raw materials become final product. There's nothing wrong with that, particularly, other than the fact that it's not sustainable. The thinking here clearly, as I've already explained, is that the four companies, and I'm trying to stay near the microphone here because I don't speak particularly loud, the four companies here are producing the leather. The raw hides come in, produce the leather, they also produce the waste. The waste goes into the thermal energy plant. They also produce effluent, of course. effluent is treated in the effluent plant. You apply recycled water back into the factory, but it's the waste from the effluent plant that makes the majority of the waste. This morning, we produce something like 40 or 50 tons of sludge cake every day. Historically, that goes to landfill. We also produce 40 or 50 tons of fleshings every day. And if you can't add any value to that by recovering the oil, then that will also have to go to landfill. Bear in mind here that landfill is no longer applicable for these waste streams. You have to find an outlet for it. So, thermal plant converts the waste into, in our case, oil for resale. Very similar to this morning, we sell our oil for biodiesel. We could, and we have, over the course of 1 week, we trialled and demonstrated this to prove it to ourselves that we could be self-sufficient just on oil. We do, or we could. We currently sell that because the value of the oil is worth more than gas that we purchase. So we buy gas and sell oil. The thermal energy plant works in a particular way. It's unique, it's patented, it's our own. Basically, we take in our wet waste and we dry them. We dry them to remove, obviously, the moisture. We also try to reduce the density of the fuel that you've got, the density of the waste that you've got. You then gasify it. So I think everyone knows what a gasifier is. Yes? Okay. Any no's? No no's. Everyone knows what a gasifier is. Okay, so it's a dirty grey barbecue with a lid on, which you blow air into, produces this molten lava of fuel. So it's a glowing bed, an orange bed. It's like the fire when you close the grate. There's no flame. It's just hot. All it does is it degrades the material. It pyrolyzes the material. Pyrolyzes into that. And creating a syngas. It's called syngas. It's a synthesis gas. All that is methane, CO, hydrogen. That gas is taken off into the oxidizer, which on the slide converted into heat. You have a burner. Burn it in excess of oxygen, it produces heat. The heat that's produced in the oxidizer goes into the boiler, and people know you produce steam. The steam goes back in the factories, and it powers the factories. There's more to come from this slide, and that will involve CHP and generation of your own power. I think that really is the next stage, becoming entirely self-sufficient in practice. On paper, the group is energy self-sufficient.
Scottish Leather Group is committed to minimising our impact on the environment, and our low-carbon leather is the result of a carefully considered sustainability plan, which will lead to zero waste and greater dependence on self-generated energy by 2015. We make sensible use of local resources, like the locally sourced hide used at our tanneries. Because the hides only spend a short period of time on the road, less fuel is expended bringing them to our door. Turning these hides into leather generates both solid and liquid waste. Solid waste from all of our group sites is transported to our thermal energy plant. Our unique self-funded thermal energy plant represents the first stage of our sustainability plan. It has been designed to convert what was once waste into resources usable in the leather-making process. The plant creates heat for the tannery and oil, which can provide fuel for electricity generators or be resold to other industries. The second phase of our plan will be the treatment of the liquid waste at our own wastewater treatment plant, resulting in a source of clean water that is pumped back to the tannery. Using this recycled water minimises the amount we have to take from our very own loch. Any solid waste from the wastewater treatment plant is, again, brought to our thermal energy plant. This closed-loop process will result in an innovative zero-waste system, which means less impact on the environment, lower running costs, and ethically sound low-carbon leather for a variety of luxury, high-profile products. The key to creating our low-carbon leather is Scottish Leather Group's thermal energy plant. This unique assembly was self-funded and is located at our Bridge of Weir site. Let's take a closer look. At the plant, solid waste from the leather-making process is converted into usable resources. Firstly, oil is extracted from the waste. As you already know, this oil can be resold or used as fuel for electricity generators. The remaining waste is then passed through a drying machine, resulting in a powder for use in the gasifier, where it is converted into gas. The gas is pumped to an oxidizer, which creates heat for our boilers. The steam generated by the boilers is then piped back to the tannery for use in the leather-making process. It is also worth remembering that the thermal energy plant does not pollute the air with harmful emissions. As you have seen, the thermal energy plant is a vital component in our strategy for self-sufficient leather production. Our customers can take comfort from the knowledge that their luxury products are crafted from leather that does not cost the earth. Scottish Leather Group, setting the standard for environmentally conscious production in the leather industry.
She says it so much better than I can. No, don't do that, that's good. I think it's bizarre, a little bit bizarre. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, in leather conferences like this, we didn't really get this kind of discussion. And now looking at the audience, not just here, but on other places, you get a lot of nodding, as if to say, yeah, this is what we are doing, this is what we have to be doing. I think that if the industry hasn't yet had the epiphany, I think it is just about to. There are places clearly where this sort of thinking doesn't take place, but I think the responsible producers there are. So I'm going to move on to the second pillar of economic sustainability, and I should be about halfway through in terms of time. Is that right? Sure I do. I'm not going to go too much into these next sessions, leave us a few minutes for questions. Clearly, if a business isn't making a profit, it's not sustainable. You can't stay in business. So profitability is a key part of sustainability. Something I think sometimes gets forgotten when we hear our environmental friends talking about that. Today's profits, tomorrow's investment, and we in Scottish Leather Group invest significant quantities of cash into plants, machinery, people, and systems. I think we'll see that through the rest of this presentation, indeed in the brochure. I think it's also worth noting here that the number of customers of ours that are demanding ethical production and demanding sustainable production. I was with one yesterday who spent 3 hours telling us what they wanted and exactly, basically endorsing what we were doing because they wanted to see more of their suppliers doing exactly the same thing. It doesn't necessarily lead to a bigger bottom line, but it does mean you stay in business. A couple of items that go either side of our sustainability story is sustainable procurement. And the welfare policy, that previous principles obviously apply. Kelly's mentioned some of that, I'm not going to dwell on it. And indeed, traceability, purchasing of hides. Low carbon leathering, it's not just about thermal treatment or recovering graphene. It's actually also about road miles, using local source material. We require of our suppliers sustainable purchasing policy, or adoption of sustainable purchasing policy. We're constantly asking them, indeed I think that will become badgering some of them, for more and more information about the footprint of their own products. Because we are under more pressure from us, from our customers, to answer the questions on their footprint. And this is because this may become a key part of the purchasing decision. Obviously cost will remain the only one. The third pillar, sustainability, social sustainability. It's about employing people. It's not just about that. It's also about human capital. It's the true Brundtland definition of sustainability. It's to leave behind more human capital than we arrive. Health and safety. It's inherent upon us that people come to work, but they inherently go home. So at the end of the day, it should be a no-brainer. It is. Some places it isn't. We have an enviable record in health and safety. It's the first item in every one of our board papers, and we set standards which are exceeding those in the rest of the sectors. Recently we created the Human Resources Department. This is, I think, somewhat overdue, but anyway, it was created. Has done some great work in developing the skills within the business that we already have, as well as creating an academy, an apprenticeship academy, which has been very fruitful. Many of the apprentices that we now have are expressing interest not just in leather making, but we also have engineering apprentices. That's very, very important for us, struggling to employ engineers. But they're moving also from manufacturing into some of the more sustainable elements of the business. In other words, they want to come and work in the thermal plant, the ashford plant. I've never known that before. In addition to the SVQs, and there are a number of assessors as well as students taking the SVQs, there's also a great deal of postgrad and degree courses being taken by some of the existing staff. And something that I wasn't aware of until I looked deeper into the personnel records is how many staff we actually retain more than 10 years. Probably 30% of the staff in the group have been with us for more than 10 years. Me amongst them, there's a few more degrees today. We also work in the community. We sponsor events, we contribute to art events, also there's some there, some here, as well as just the sponsorship and the obvious donation of money. There's also the reaching out to the community. I speak at school events, and hopefully they're inspirational talks. They seem to be, the feedback seems to be extremely good. I think and hope that we do more of that. Certainly the perception that we get from the people in the community seems to be far more positive since we started doing this. One of the more recent developments in the group has been operational excellence. We were good, but we weren't quite good enough. So there's been a program of development and improving our performance. This is really to support the vision, but it's about, I use paraphrase, doing more and more with less and less until we make absolutely everything using nothing. Become more and more efficient. I'm not going to go into the 8 elements of this. You can read about it in the manual, which is far more interesting than I did at the start. So, sustainable future. We're well on our way towards zero target, zero-based target and energy self-sufficiency. You can account for that in any way that you choose to. At the moment, as an industry standard for life cycle assessment, an industry standard for the measurement of footprint, really it comes down to the corporate presentation of that data. Pleased to say that our footprint has reduced per hide by 40% since we started this journey. That's a significant drop, almost half energy production per hide. That's not generating it, that's using less per hide. We also generate more power than we consume. If you add together the value of the syngas and the oil value, the energy value of the oil, it makes us carbon neutral. In some ways of calculating, actually carbon positive. I don't subscribe to that. We also reduced our waste to landfill. This is a key issue. It's one of the key regulation drivers right at the beginning of the programme, because we had to avoid landfill, partly for cost, but also mostly for being able to continue in business. You can't get rid of your waste, you can't operate. Not there yet, but getting there. Improved social acceptance, obviously increasing employment. The group now employs in excess of 730 people. When I joined in 2003, I think it was 360 people or thereabouts. So the group has grown significantly during that period. And I think the skills level and the perception has also grown significantly. And indeed, we're increasing our market share of certainly the automotive sector as a result of that footprint. It's certainly something that customers are asking.